There are menu items in some parts of Pennsylvania that you will not likely see anywhere else. Items like Scrapple, Chow Chow, shoe fly pie, and Whoopie Pies. And you should know that when you see these items, you're in the land of the Pennsylvania Dutch, the most popular area being Lancaster County. And as someone who grew up in the Pennsylvania Dutch region, I've been eating most of this food all my life. I'm here to share with you my list of the most iconic of these dishes. Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. I am Danielle, your host here on Out Living, and we're going to talk about this delicious food. So first of all, one of the most popular places to experience this kind of cuisine is Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And if you've done so, you're not alone in this adventure because in 2021, they had over 9 million people visit Lancaster. That's one of their highest years yet. And I can bet you pretty much all of them ate the food while they were there. So before we get into the food list, let's clarify what Pennsylvania Dutch actually means. It can refer to three different things. It can refer to people, the region, and the food, and they're all kind of interconnected. Because Pennsylvania Dutch actually just means Pennsylvania Germans, basically. They immigrated from places that were German-speaking, like Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and then parts of France. Not all of the Pennsylvania Dutch were Amish, but that was part of the group that came over, and they mainly left because of religious persecution, and they settled in Lancaster in about 1760. So when they settled in pretty much one area that kind of grew as they grew. This map here is going to show you kind of where they're located. The bright red is the core group, as they call it, and then the greater area is around that. But as you can see, it takes up, practically half of Pennsylvania, so it definitely is a big group of people. So if you're looking at like specific cities that has the surrounding area of Pennsylvania Dutch, you're looking at Hershey, York, Lancaster, Reading, Allentown. Those are the popular cities where all around that is Pennsylvania Dutch. Last part we're going to talk about is the meat of the video, which is the food of Pennsylvania Dutch. Basically, it's a lot of German influence and agrarian culture. So they came here, they farmed, they had their German background, and they just kind of mixed this all together, what was producing here, what they had there, and that's Pennsylvania Dutch. So a lot of it's German based and kind of a German background for the food. So another fun tidbit I found on Wikipedia was a bit of an article about the Pennsylvania Dutch food. And it said that if you had to make a short list of regions in the United States where the regional food is actually consumed on a daily basis, the land of the Pennsylvania Dutch, specifically around Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, would be at the top or near the top of that list. So I think it's cool. It shows you that people here love the food and they keep eating it, and it just keeps going on for generations. So they love their stuff, and it's tried and true dishes that people really love. So hopefully now you have a better understanding of what Pennsylvania Dutch is, kind of the background and the origins of this kind of food. We're going to get into my picks for the most iconic foods, specifically in Lancaster County, that are Pennsylvania Dutch. There's a very, very long list of Pennsylvania Dutch foods, but we're going to kind of narrow it down to what I think is the most popular in Lancaster, and probably a little York influence since that's where I grew up. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and a quick shout out to David, our buddy on this channel, one of the members, who suggested I do a video like this, like a background of the food and the food of Lancaster. So hopefully you enjoy it, and thanks for watching. So we will start with breakfast items and move on to appetizers, soups, side dishes, and then main dishes, and then finally dessert. The first item I'm going to talk about is a breakfast item, and according to my recent poll on my channel, is the most unpopular food, if you know what I'm saying. And I'm talking about Scrapple. So apparently a lot of you don't like Scrapple, but I will say I actually really do like Scrapple, but only with some really good maple syrup. If you had to put it in a category, I would say it's like a breakfast sausage, but it basically is a whole bunch of pork scrappings that they put into a loaf and sliced and fried up in oil, and often serve it for breakfast. So basically a sausage. That's what you gotta tell yourself. And if it's done well and crispy, it's very delicious. But not everybody agrees with me on this subject. Here's another little fun tidbit I found out researching this video. According to travelfoodatlas.com, they did an article on must-try dishes of the United States of America, and Scrapple is one of the 16 must-try American foods. So well done, Scrapple. At number 2 are soft pretzels. Yes, soft pretzels. They have their American roots, so to speak, in and around Lancaster County. While some say these treats came along on the Mayflower and were used for trade with Native Americans, it's a definite fact that German immigrants brought this wonderful snack to America when they settled in Pennsylvania around 1710. And then in 1861, Julius Sturgis opened one of the first, and now the oldest, commercial pretzel bakery in America. And they still give out $5 tours and pretzel lessons here, so I highly suggest going there. And to further prove my reason for soft pretzels being on this list, let's talk some statistics. First, about 80% of the nation's pretzels are produced in Pennsylvania. That right there is a pretty good statistic. And in Philadelphia, which is only about an hour away and still considered Pennsylvania Dutch country, the typical Philadelphian consumes about 12 times as many pretzels as the national average. And lastly, according to tastingtable.com and an article they did on 22 of the best-sold pretzels in the whole United States, 3 of the top 10, including the #1 spot, are from Lancaster and Hershey. Immergut in the town of Intercourse is on the list, the Pretzel House in Hershey, and then Busy Bees Farm Market in the middle of Amish country holds the #1 spot. Next at number 3 is Chow Chow. So if you have no idea what that is, apparently you're not alone, because my husband, who grew up in Pennsylvania Dutch country, had no idea what this was when I was talking to him about it the other day. But what it is basically a vegetable relish made from summer produce left over. They kind of can it all together and preserve it for the winter. They serve this a lot at restaurants as an appetizer on the table. It can look different depending on where you're eating it and what was growing extra in the garden that year. They do make this other places besides Pennsylvania, and they have a southern version and they have a northern version. Okay, I'm putting number 4 on this list, not because it's special to this area, but it is by the way it's eaten. Many people put apple butter on toast and bread and other things, but what makes it Pennsylvania Dutch is putting it on cottage cheese. I love this, I still eat this way, but not many people are going to get on board with this unless they grew up eating it like this, but it is very delicious, and they do make really good apple butter in Lancaster, by the way. Okay, now we're moving on to some soup. At number 5 is one of the most iconic Pennsylvania Dutch style soups, and that is chicken corn soup. This is not chicken noodle soup with corn. There are no noodles, it is purely chicken broth, corn, tiny potato pieces, and then cooked egg whites chopped up into pieces and put in the soup. It is delicious. A great thing for a chilly night, and something you do see in a lot of the restaurants. I just did a video on it actually not that long ago. We made it here at home and it was pretty darn good. So a good thing to have, and it's actually quite healthy. Number 6 is technically a topping or a dressing. It is hot bacon dressing, and you will find this in various restaurants in Lancaster County. Some of them are really famous for it. Miller's claims to have one of the best ones. I look forward to trying theirs soon. So the main ingredient is bacon and the bacon drippings which you need for this recipe. Then there are eggs and vinegar, sugar, water, and salt and pepper. And then you've got an incredible dressing. Okay, number 7 is a very popular side dish in Lancaster County, and really now it's spread all over the place, but they make it a little different in Lancaster in the Pennsylvania Dutch way. It is brown buttered noodles. So it's not just buttered noodles, they actually brown their butter, and then you can see it in the noodles, little specks of brown in the butter sauce, and it's delicious. The funny thing is about brown butter noodles is that the restaurants actually make them usually a little different. Sometimes the sauce is more brown, sometimes there's not as much brown in the sauce. The noodles can be different. There can be the egg noodles, there can be just strips of noodles, there can be skinny noodles, fatter noodles, so it depends on the restaurant, but they all are pretty delicious. I love Diener's, that's probably one of my favorites. I also love Bird and Hands, they have really good brown butter noodles as well. Okay, the next iconic dish, to most people, is a side dish, but I grew up eating it as a main dish because we loved it so much we would have plenty of it. And I'm talking about macaroni and cheese with stewed tomatoes. And it has to be on top of the mac and cheese, otherwise it's not Pennsylvania Dutch. And this is kind of like Scrapple or apple butter on cottage cheese. If you didn't grow up with it, you think it's not very good, but it is delicious, I think. I think it's a perfect combination of sweet tomatoes with a little, flavor in it, and then the cheesy macaroni. It's like savory and sweet mixed together. It's delicious. And if you don't believe me, just when you go to a buffet in Lancaster, look and see how they place these items. They're always next to each other for a reason, because you're supposed to put the tomatoes on top of the mac and cheese. Anyway, it's okay if you don't like it, but it is actually one of my absolute favorite meals of all time. Number 9 is potato filling. So if you've been to Lancaster County, you've probably seen this on the buffets. So potato filling is basically a bread filling with mashed potatoes all mixed together into a casserole. It's very moist, very delicious. Definitely a classic Pennsylvania Dutch side dish. The last side dish I'm going to talk about is also an appetizer some places, but it is red beet eggs, also known as pickled eggs. So they're basically what they say they are. They're hard-boiled eggs that have been marinating and soaking in red beet juice that has some extra stuff in it like sugar and vinegar for days, and then it kind of soaks the whole way through the egg, and you have these really sweet eggs to eat as a side dish or an appetizer. It may be an acquired taste for some. It took me about 35 years to really like them. Okay, so now we're on to the main dishes, which is fun to talk about. First off on the main dish list is one of my absolute favorite things to eat in Lancaster. I'm talking about ham balls, or even ham loaf, because it's kind of the same thing, just in different form. Ham balls and ham loaf are made from ground pork and basically ground up smoked ham, as well as the seasonings. I've tried making this where I live, and they just don't have the right kind of smoked ham to be able to replicate the recipe. So it's why it's such a treasured thing to eat when I'm there, because it's so good in Lancaster and they do it perfectly well, especially when you have the right kind of like light and sweet pineapple sauce that almost everybody puts on the handballs. It's delicious. At number 12 is another iconic dish, but when you hear the name of it, you may wonder why it's on the list. But it's not the same in Lancaster as it is in other parts of the country. Pennsylvania Dutch chicken pot pie is a mixture of homemade noodles, chicken, veggies, and broth and gravy. That's basically what it is. But it is not a pie. It's not even served in a pie. It is extremely savory and tasty and just fills your belly with warm goodness. This is another dish that's made differently in the different restaurants. Hershey Farm has a really thick version of it, and then Miller's has a more stewy, kind of soupy one where there's a lot of broth and the noodles and the vegetables. Coming in at number 13 is pork and sauerkraut. This is something that is what people eat on New Year's Day in this area. The Pennsylvania Dutch way is pork and sauerkraut and mashed potatoes. Next, at number 16, probably surprise you, is chicken and waffles. So it did kind of originate in the colonial period in the 1600s in Pennsylvania Dutch country. The traditional Pennsylvania Dutch way, the version that consists of plain waffle with pulled stewed chicken on top, covered in gravy. So that's different than when you're going to go to the South. And this dish has spread and it kind of has its own unique ways it's served. In the South, you're going to have the fried chicken and the waffles. So it's just a little differently served here in Lancaster. All right, so the next two dishes, you won't see them as commonly in the restaurants. Some do serve them, but it's not like a definite item you're going to see. So the first one I'm talking about is liver and onions. I don't really know what to say about this dish, except that if you like liver, then go for it. A wise woman once said that liver and onions is a perfectly good waste of an onion, and I completely concur. Next, at number 16, this dish is called Hogmo. I'll tell you what it's made of. The gist of it is sausage and potatoes, like cut up potatoes, but then they stuff it inside a pig stomach. So that's where we lose people. They just can't get beyond that. I think if you try either of these dishes, especially the Hogmo, I would say you are an honorary member of the Pennsylvania Dutch community, because that takes dedication. Okay, so we're gonna move on to one of my favorite categories, and that's dessert. The first dessert we're gonna talk about is apple dumplings. Apple dumplings are made by coring and peeling an apple, covering it in a pie crust, like kind of wrapping it up, dusting it with some sugar, cinnamon, and baking it. Most people eat it with milk. That's how a lot of people in my family eat it. Coming in at number 18 is a Foss Knot. So a Foss Knot is a donut made once a year. It was made as a way to use up the lard, sugar, fat, butter that were forbidden during Lent. They're basically a yeast-raised potato pastry, and they're deep fried like a donut, and they are very delicious. I like them with powdered sugar on them. But it was always something I looked forward to every year when I grew up in York County, and they were so delicious, but they would last a few days, so you get them while you can, and actually get them while they're hot, because they're really good warmed up. At number 19 is shoe fly pie. This is a very classic dessert. You will find it all over Lancaster County. The origins of the shoe fly pie date back to the 1800s. It kind of evolved over time, but now the wet bottom shoe fly pie is the most popular in Lancaster County. Now the name shoe fly pie does not come from shooing off flies, though I always thought it did. It actually comes from the original brand of the molasses used from Philadelphia called Shoe Fly Molasses. This pie is ooey gooey deliciousness. If you like brown sugar, molasses, and a light crummy topping on top, you're going to like this pie. So I'd say give it a try if you have not. It's either a love it or hate it kind of dessert. At number 20 is one of my absolute favorite things to eat in Lancaster, and it has been all of my life, and is the Whoopie Pie. So the Whoopie Pie is quintessential Lancaster Amish country dessert. But it is not actually a pie. It's one of those funny titles for something that's not really what it says it is. A Whoopie Pie is basically two mini cakes with icing in the middle. So they've definitely grown in popularity. They're going across the nation now. Most people know what they are. But they are made differently. So Lancaster County has the more old-fashioned icing in the middle, the butter, the shortening, the little bit of milk, powdered sugar. But even within Lancaster County, they're made differently all over the county, just like a chocolate chip cookie. Like, we all make ours a little different, and it's the same thing with Whoopie Pies. Sometimes the cake is dry, sometimes it's moist, sometimes it's like spongy, sometimes it's really thick, and so it just depends on who's making them. But I have my favorites. I have Birmingham Bakery is one of my favorites. I also love Stolfitz Bakery's Whoopie Pies. They're very good. And there's another stand called the Countryside Road stand that sells Mary Ann's Whoopie Pies, and those are very good too. So those are my favorites in Lancaster. And bonus info, there are a couple of Whoopie Pie festivals in Lancaster throughout the year. Hershey Farm has theirs in September. It's always a Saturday after Labor Day. We went there this past year and that was really fun. They have hundreds of varieties, but don't get there late like we did because they were sold out of a lot of the most popular ones. I hope you enjoyed that list, and it's a lot to talk about, but who doesn't love talking about delicious food? This is why we're all here, basically. I'd love your opinion about what you think was on here that is definitely Amish country, kind of Pennsylvania Dutch classic, or if there's something I missed that you think should be on the list. Let me know that too in the comments. I'm curious about your opinions. It definitely is an area known for their meats and cheeses and ice cream. Those are the kind of main things that people know about Amish country, and just Pennsylvania in general has delicious ice cream and meats and cheeses, and it's a great place for that kind of food. But now you have hopefully a better understanding of the classic Pennsylvania Dutch foods, the iconic ones that they're famous for. A lot of them have some deep roots for hundreds of years, so it's pretty fun to find out all that good stuff. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy your next food adventure, and hopefully it's in Lancaster soon.